Before we begin, imagine standing in a crowded auction hall, surrounded by strangers bidding on heroes they'll never truly understand. Now imagine a small voice cutting through that noise, a little girl with only a handful of crumpled bills and a secret in her heart. If you love emotional, cinematic stories about loyalty, courage, and second chances, stay with me until the very end, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more unforgettable stories like this. The warehouse on the outskirts of town smelled like metal, dust, and old rain. Folding chairs were arranged in crooked rows beneath harsh fluorescent lights that flickered with an irritating buzz. A banner hung above a makeshift stage, retired K9 unit auction, honoring our heroes. But there was nothing honorable about the way the crowd murmured. Men in pressed jackets and polished shoes stood in clusters, whispering numbers and studying clipboards. Some were security contractors. Some were private collectors. A few were simply thrill-seekers who liked the idea of owning a dog that had once chased down criminals in the dead of night. Inside a chain-link enclosure near the stage sat Rex. Rex had served 8 years on the force. 8 years of tracking missing children through forests, sniffing out explosives, cornering suspects in alleyways thick with gunpowder and fear. His coat, once a deep black and tan sheen, now carried streaks of grey around his muzzle. A thin scar traced the bridge of his nose, a souvenir from a night when things went wrong. He didn't bark. He didn't pace. He simply watched. Officer Daniel Hayes stood near the back wall, arms folded tightly across his chest. He had been Rex's handler since the dog was barely a year old. They had trained together, bled together, nearly died together. But budget cuts had come swiftly and without sentiment. Rex had injured his hind leg during a warehouse takedown months ago. Though he'd healed, the department deemed him non-operational. Non-operational. Like a broken machine. Daniel had tried to adopt him, but new departmental policies required retired K9s to be processed through public auction to ensure transparency. It was bureaucratic nonsense. Daniel didn't have the funds to compete with private bidders. A sharp bang echoed as the auctioneer tapped the microphone. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for attending. Today we offer you a rare opportunity. Highly trained former K9 officers, disciplined, loyal, and battle-tested. One by one, dogs were led out. Some barked nervously. Some wagged their tails, confused but hopeful. Bidding rose quickly. Numbers flew like bullets. Rex was last. When they brought him onto the stage, the room grew quiet in a different way. He moved slowly but with dignity, head level, eyes alert. His muscles were still powerful beneath his coat. A hero in waiting. The auctioneer cleared his throat. This is Rex. 8 years of decorated service. Specialization in explosives detection and suspect apprehension. Starting bid, $2,000. A hand shot up. $2,000. $2,500. 3. Daniel's jaw tightened. $4,000. Rex remained still, but his ears twitched. He scanned the crowd, not anxiously, not excitedly. Searching. Then it happened. The large sliding warehouse door creaked open with a metallic groan. Cold afternoon light spilled across the concrete floor. And a small figure stepped inside. She couldn't have been older than 8. Her brown hair was pulled into uneven pigtails. She wore sneakers that were too big and a faded pink hoodie with a tiny rip near the sleeve. In her hands, she clutched a glass jar filled with coins and folded bills. The murmuring intensified. "Hey, kid, this isn't a pet shop," someone muttered. She ignored them. Her eyes locked onto Rex. And Rex froze. Completely. His body stiffened. His breathing changed, slow, deliberate. His ears stood upright, not in alertness but recognition. Daniel felt it before he understood it. The girl stepped closer to the stage, weaving between adults who looked down at her in annoyance. The auctioneer hesitated. "Young lady, this is a formal auction." She swallowed. Her voice was soft but steady. "I'm here for him." A few chuckles rippled through the crowd. The auctioneer forced a smile. "Bidding is currently at $4,000. She stepped forward and placed the jar on the edge of the stage. Coins clinked loudly in the tense silence. I have $73.40, she said. And I can bring the rest later. Laughter burst out openly now. Sweetheart, that dog costs more than your house, a man in a grey suit scoffed. But Rex did something unexpected. He moved. Not toward the highest bidder. Not toward Daniel. He stepped to the very edge of the stage and lowered himself into a sit directly in front of the girl. His tail didn't wag wildly. It gave one slow, firm thump against the wood. The girl's breath hitched. Rex, she whispered. Daniel's heart slammed against his ribs. How did she know his name? The auctioneer tapped the microphone awkwardly. Please step aside. But Rex refused to move. A handler tugged gently on his leash. Rex didn't growl. He didn't resist aggressively. He simply locked his eyes onto the girl, deep, unblinking, as if the entire warehouse had vanished. And then, in a motion that stunned everyone, the retired K9 who had faced down armed suspects without flinching slowly lowered his head and rested his chin on the edge of the stage, inches from her small hands. The room went silent. Daniel stepped forward involuntarily. The girl lifted a trembling hand and placed it against Rex's muzzle. The contact was gentle, familiar. And in that instant, Rex closed his eyes. No one in the warehouse moved. It felt like the air itself had paused. The girl's fingers threaded carefully into the fur beneath Rex's jaw, exactly the way a trained handler might, firm, reassuring pressure in a specific spot. Rex exhaled deeply, a low rumble of contentment vibrating through his chest. Daniel's pulse roared in his ears. That wasn't random. That wasn't luck. She knew him. The auctioneer cleared his throat nervously. Sir, control the dog. I'm controlling him, the handler muttered, though it was obvious he wasn't. Rex was choosing. The man in the grey suit crossed his arms. This is ridiculous. Continue the bidding. 5,000, someone called impatiently. The auctioneer seized the number gratefully. 5,000, do I hear 55? But Rex didn't even flick an ear toward the voices. His attention remained on the girl. She leaned closer and whispered something no one else could hear. Daniel strained to read her lips. You found me. The word struck him like lightning. Found me. Memory flooded back. 2 years ago. A missing child report. 7-year-old female. Abducted from a playground. Last seen wearing a pink hoodie. The case had shaken the entire department. Daniel and Rex had been deployed immediately. They'd tracked the scent through alleys, across a drainage ditch, into a wooded area behind an abandoned farmhouse. Rex had been relentless. Through rain. Through darkness. Through gunfire when the suspect panicked. Daniel remembered shouting commands, the crack of a weapon, Rex lunging forward without hesitation. The takedown had been brutal but swift. Inside the farmhouse closet, they had found her. Curled up. Terrified. Alive. Daniel's throat tightened as he looked at the girl now. The same brown eyes. A little taller. Healthier. But unmistakable. She's the kidnapping case, Daniel whispered. The handler blinked. What? Before Daniel could respond, the girl reached into her hoodie pocket and pulled out something worn and folded. A newspaper clipping. She held it up toward the stage. It was a photo of Rex from the day of the rescue. Daniel stood beside him, hand on his partner's back. The headline read, K9 hero saves abducted child. I told my mom I'd find him someday, the girl said, louder now. Her voice shook, but she didn't back away. He stayed with me in the ambulance. He didn't leave until I stopped crying. A murmur swept through the crowd, not amused this time, but uneasy. Rex's tail thumped again. The man in the grey suit lowered his bidding paddle slowly. The auctioneer hesitated. This is highly irregular. Daniel stepped forward. Her name is Emily Carter. The girl looked at him, recognition dawning. You're the other one. He nodded once. Yeah, I'm the other one. Tears pooled in her eyes, but she blinked them back fiercely. He promised. Daniel frowned. Promised what? She swallowed hard. When I was scared. I held his face and I told him if I ever saw him again, I'd take care of him like he took care of me. A grown man near the back sniffed loudly and turned away. The auctioneer shifted uncomfortably. "Officer, policy." "Policy doesn't cover this," Daniel cut in quietly. Emily lifted the jar again. The coins rattled. "I know it's not enough. But I've been saving since that day. Birthdays. Christmas. Lemonade stands." Her sneakers squeaked slightly as she stepped closer. "I don't need him to be a police dog," she said. "He can just be Rex." The room felt smaller now. More human. Rex suddenly stood, ignoring the handler's slack grip on the leash. He descended the small ramp from the stage without permission. Gasps erupted. But he didn't run. He walked directly to Emily and sat in front of her again. Then, with deliberate gentleness, he lifted one paw and placed it against her chest. Right over her heart. Emily let out a broken sob and wrapped her arms around his neck. This time, Rex's tail wagged freely. Daniel wiped at his eyes roughly, pretending it was dust. The grey-suited bidder cleared his throat. "Withdraw my offer." One by one, paddles lowered. No one wanted to be the villain in this story. The auctioneer looked trapped between paperwork and conscience. Daniel stepped onto the stage and picked up the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, voice steady despite the storm in his chest, "Rex has served this community with more loyalty than most of us deserve. Today, he's made his choice." Silence. Daniel reached into his back pocket slowly. He pulled out his wallet. Inside was his emergency savings envelope, rent money he had been guarding carefully. He walked over to the auctioneer's table and placed it down. "I'll cover the rest." The auctioneer blinked. "Officer Hayes." "Process it," Daniel said quietly. Emily looked up at him. "You don't have to." He smiled softly. "Yeah, I do." Papers were shuffled. Forms were signed. The official stamp came down with a heavy thud. Sold. Not to the highest bidder, but to the smallest one. As the crowd dispersed, many avoided eye contact, ashamed of how quickly they had turned a hero into property. Outside, the sun dipped low, casting golden light across the parking lot. Emily knelt beside Rex, holding his face again. "You're coming home," she whispered. Rex leaned into her touch as if he'd been waiting for those words his entire life. But Daniel couldn't shake a strange feeling. Because when Rex had frozen earlier, it hadn't just been recognition. It had been alertness. As if he sensed something more. And as Emily's mother hurried across the lot to meet them, Daniel noticed a black SUV idling at the far end of the street. Watching. The SUV's windows were tinted dark enough to swallow reflections. Daniel's instincts prickled instantly. Years on the force had taught him to trust that feeling. Rex noticed it too. The joyful wag of his tail slowed. His ears angled sharply toward the road. Emily followed his gaze. "What is it?" Daniel forced a calm smile. "Probably nothing." But it wasn't nothing. The SUV engine revved slightly, not leaving, not approaching. Waiting. Emily's mother, Sarah Carter, reached them breathless. "Emily, I told you to stay inside the..." She stopped when she saw Rex. Her hand flew to her mouth. "Oh my God," she whispered. Rex stepped forward carefully, recognizing her scent. Sarah had been at the hospital that night, crying into Emily's hair while Rex lay at the foot of the bed. He gave a gentle wag. Sarah dropped to her knees and hugged him too. Daniel's gaze never left the SUV. A memory stirred. The kidnapper from 2 years ago hadn't acted alone. There had been suspicion of an accomplice, someone who had escaped before backup arrived. Never identified. Never caught. The SUV's brake lights flickered. Then it rolled forward slightly. Rex's posture changed instantly. Gone was the retired hero enjoying a reunion. In his place stood the tactical K9. Focused. Ready. Low growl. Daniel stepped subtly in front of Emily and her mother. The SUV window rolled down halfway. A man inside watched them. Even from a distance, Daniel recognized the eyes. Cold. Calculating. And filled with something dangerously close to hatred. Rex barked once, sharp and commanding. The man's jaw tightened. For a heartbeat, Daniel feared he might pull a weapon. Instead, the SUV accelerated suddenly and sped down the road, tires screeching. Silence fell again. Emily looked confused. Was that bad? Daniel crouched beside her. Not anymore. Rex continued staring until the vehicle vanished completely. Only then did his body relax. Emily wrapped her arms around him again. It's okay. You're safe now. But Daniel knew the truth. It wasn't Rex who needed protecting. It was her. He stood slowly. Sarah, I need you to be careful. Lock doors. Call me if you see anything unusual. Fear crept into her expression. You think it's connected? I don't know, he admitted. But Rex does. Rex met his eyes knowingly. That night, Daniel couldn't sleep. He replayed the SUV driver's face over and over until it clicked. An old case file. An informant photo. The suspected accomplice. Released on a technicality months ago. Daniel grabbed his keys. Across town, Emily lay in bed with Rex curled protectively beside it. She had insisted he sleep in her room. Every small creak of the house made Rex's ears twitch. At 2:17 a.m., headlights swept silently across the Carter home. Rex was on his feet before the engine cut. Low growl. Emily stirred. Rex. Glass shattered downstairs. Sarah screamed. Rex exploded into motion. By the time Daniel's patrol car screeched around the corner, because he had been driving by, unable to ignore his instincts, Rex was already in the yard. The masked intruder barely had time to turn. Rex launched with precision born of years of training. He didn't maul wildly. He immobilized. Locked onto the arm holding a weapon and forced the man to the ground. Police sirens wailed in the distance. Daniel sprinted forward, weapon drawn. Down. Now. The mask was ripped away during the struggle. It was him. The accomplice. Desperate. Vengeful. Caught. As officers cuffed the man, Rex stood over Emily, who clung to her mother on the porch. Daniel approached slowly. Rex's breathing was heavy but controlled. He looked at Daniel as if to say, still operational. Daniel laughed softly through exhausted relief. Yeah, partner. I see that. Emily stepped forward despite her mother's protests. She hugged Rex tightly. You saved me again. Rex licked her cheek once. Weeks later, the news headlines told a different story. Retired K-9 foils home invasion. But the real story wasn't about heroics. It was about loyalty that never retired. On a quiet afternoon in their backyard, Emily sat in the grass brushing Rex's fur carefully. Daniel leaned against the fence. You know, he said gently, he chose you. Emily smiled. No, we chose each other. Rex lay between them, content. Not a police dog. Not an item on an auction list. Just Rex. Protector. Friend. Family. And if this story touched your heart, if you believe heroes deserve second chances and loyalty deserves a home, make sure you like, share, and subscribe for more powerful stories just like this. Because sometimes the smallest voice in the room is the one that changes everything.